The condition monitoring plugin allows VMS operators to monitor temperature data from FLIR thermal imagers in a visual way, and to be alerted upon temperature readings above or below pre-configured thresholds. This integration currently supports the A400 and A700 models, as well as the A500 and A50 and 70 cameras. A version supporting the A310 and the AX8 will be coming later this year. Users can create their own views and maps with gauges, indicators, and line charts dynamically showing the current state within Latitude. The VMS administrators can also configure any desired VMS operation to occur upon a temperature event. As we get into the demonstration, you'll see firsthand how a above temperature can trigger maybe a pop-up video and control center, an alarm that comes up, alerting the operator that there's a potential issue in a certain area. Now, before we move into the demonstration, let's go over a couple other quick key points here. Again, I want to focus on those supported models, the A400, A700, 500, the A50, A70, and of course, coming soon, the A310 and the AX8. This is a brand new AIC integration. It is extremely easy installation. Again, it just requires the installation of a plugin and then a license. And I'll go through the steps on how to get this configured in the demonstration here in just a couple of minutes. Okay, so let's take a quick look at how the condition monitoring works within the UVMS. First, I'd like to show you the end product, and then we'll take a couple of step backs, go into Admin Center, and I'll show you how we got to this end point. So the first thing that I'd like to share with you is a layout that I prepared for this webinar. So this condition monitoring layout, when accessed, will show some different layouts, gauges, and indicators right within Control Center, and these are showing real-time information. So just as an example, this camera right here represents my A400. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull this camera out into the Control Center environment so it can be displayed. That way we can reference the points as we're talking about them. So although a little bit hard to see, there's spot 1, spot 3, spot 4, and then spot 5, spot 3, which is over here in the server rack. So I've got a couple of pump heads, a motor, and then a POE injector that's been spotted over here, just for a few different reference points within the image. So each one of these gauges over here is basically linked to one of these spots, or in some cases only a single spot. And I'll explain that in a couple of seconds. So just as an example, on this pump here, spot 1 is linked to this indicator as well as the gauge. In addition to those 2 points, it's also linked to the graph that's over here on the right hand side. Now, this gives great real-time and historical data to a certain degree. Again, I mean, this is only in real time here, so you could see the trending of the current temperature right here. And then of course there's an alarm that's set up on this as well. So when the temperature reaches 100 degrees, which we'll demonstrate here shortly, that an alarm condition will have been met, and that alarm will be passed to the VMS, and then of course we can use that to trigger alarms, pop up video, and all types of other things within the VMS environment. One additional line graph that I've also added is a delta. So I created a delta within the unit between points 1 and points 3, and I've set them to a -5 +5 degree variance, so that way the 2 little pump heads that are on my compressor, when it's up and running, if they vary between that 10-degree range, it could potentially either trigger an alarm when it goes above that limit, or potentially trigger an alarm when it's below that limit. So that will again just help me ensure that both of these pumps are running at full capacity, and if one were to fail or something were to happen, the temperature may be substantially off from the other, and that could also be another triggering factor that I can utilize in the Control Center environment to trigger alarms and pop up videos so that there's more situational awareness about what's going on. So the big question is, how did I get this? Let's take a second and look at Admin Center and the camera to identify a couple of key things that need to be set in order to bring this to fruition. So although we're not truly talking about the cameras here, just a quick jump over to our A400. A couple of things. First, before you get into setting this up, you're going to need to at least set up some spots or some delta points or boxes or something to work with in the system and get your points placed accordingly to where they need to be. And then, of course, you can set up the alarm information here. And all this information that you input into the camera carries over into the Latitude environment, so there's really nothing additional you have to do over there but make some minor setting adjustments. Now, one more additional thing, and again, this is just for quick reference, if this is the first time that you have somebody setting this up, before you leave the camera, once you have all your points or your boxes set up, just quickly go over to the administration page, go over to user management, and copy this token that you see right here, because you're going to need this for the communication to be able to take place between the camera and the VMS. So now that we have this taken care of, let's jump over to Admin Center real quick. In Admin Center, the first thing I'm going to do is take a look at my physical view tree. And after you bring one of your cameras into the environment, as you'll see here under my main archiver, I have my A400 camera. Now that token that I just copied from the camera, that's going to need to be placed right down here in the condition monitoring settings under the API token. So what you do is you paste that in there, you'll save that, and that'll get things started for you. Now once we have that set, we can go over to our logical view tree where we can begin setting up some measurement devices. Now this can be done simply by right-clicking up here at the top of the tree and choosing measurement device from the list. Once you add a measurement device from the list, navigate over to the measurement device settings, choose a camera to associate it with, and of course you'll see that there's only one camera in the list, and that's because I've grabbed that token from the camera, added it to the camera in the UVS so it knows that it exists. So now I can choose that camera from the list. I can select my available measurements that are already set in the camera. So I've got spot 1, spot 2, 3, 4, and then of course that delta that we saw earlier in Control Center. So here what I'll do is I'll choose spot number 3, and then I can select the display type. The display type could be a gauge, a line chart, or a red-green indicator. Again, this is exactly how you'd like it to appear in the Control Center environment. For this particular one, I'll just go with a gauge. Now from here, a quick click of the Save Disk will update the information, and it should be displaying everything correctly, including the pulled information from the camera itself, which can be seen here. If any changes are made in the camera, you can simply click on Reset Camera Values, which will pull in that new information. Now once we have this set, we can go back over to the General page, which should be displaying that gauge that we just set up. So now that we have the gauge, there's a couple of different things that we can do with the gauges. We can either display them natively in Control Center, like you saw in the supplemental windows that I had open, or they can be added directly to a map. Now we're not going to get into creating maps or how to get these maps created, but I'm just going to show you really quickly how simple and easy it is to add one of these gauges to an existing map. So once you have a map created in the system, we can just simply go to our Map Builder application, open up an existing map, or of course this can be used to create a map. Where you can see the gauges that I already had placed on the original one. We can find our measurement device that we just created and just simply drag that over to the map and position it where we would like it. So in other words, if we were monitoring this pump over here, we can add this gauge over this pump so it can be monitored in Control Center on the map. Once we've added the new measurement device, a simple click of the save disk will update. And now if we go back to our control center environment and refresh our tile layout, we should see those changes take place. And now we have our new gauge on the map. In addition to the gauges being displayed on the map, they can also be dragged out independently to the tile layout, so they can be displayed in any fashion that you see fit. In addition to the overlays, in all of the excellent situation awareness that the condition monitoring app provides for us, there's also a lot of additional information that's being displayed. As an example, you can see that the events pane is open at the bottom, which is displaying spot temperature events that come in, or delta, or box, or whatever it might be. So there's a constant flow of data that's coming directly into Control Center and into Latitude. As a matter of fact, there are even reports that you can run within the Latitude environment to get historical information based on alarms and temperature fluctuations within the system showing abnormal or normal conditions. So there's a lot of information that can be sourced and utilized from the system itself. So one last thing I'd like to show you before we conclude this demonstration of condition monitoring is I'd like to show you this in action. Now, I have a pre-recorded clip just to show how this works. And again, I did this because I have to run a compressor pump here, so just real quick, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to run this through, and then we'll talk it through so you can see it in action. You can see how the gauges work. You can see how the alarm comes in. You can see your video being popped up when the alarm condition is met in the system, and all the other neat little things that happen with this integration. So now that I have the compressor turned on, there's a couple of things that you want to take a closer look at. You can see the temperature rising on all the gauges, and quite fast, might I add, and that's because I've sped up this clip a little bit just to save some time and make it occur a little bit faster. So each one of these gauges you're going to see climbing rapidly until we reach the alarm state, when we breach that 100-degree temperature alert that we've set. And immediately you can see that that triggered an alarm which caused this tile to automatically populate with content. And of course, there's additional information that's now down here in the alarm pane which signals that there's an alarm state met. Here's a quick image of the 2 points that we're using, 1 and 3. And you can see that the alarm has been indicated on both of those points shown in the alarm pane below. So that gives you real-time information and an easy way to respond to a situation that may be unraveling quickly.